Hello and welcome to another episode of Andy's Favorite Tech Things. In today's episode, we're talking about SurveyMonkey and the ways that we can use SurveyMonkey's tools to help groups evaluate their progress and do that in a way that requires as little manual data entry from our team's perspective as possible. We're going to start by talking about setting up multiple collectors. That is the core of what everything else builds off on. From there, we'll talk about how to filter and compare multiple collectors, and then how to export evaluation reports from SurveyMonkey. In another episode, we'll come back and talk about how we can export, say, 12 months of data and give that back to a group when we're doing like a year in review, want a group to reflect on the past year and plan for the next one. So I am here in Google Chrome. I find Google Chrome to be actually a little bit easier for SurveyMonkey. And so if you're ever having issues in Firefox or Safari or Internet Explorer Edge, you may want to try Google Chrome for using SurveyMonkey. And I'm logged in and I've just searched our surveys, and you'll see that what I used to do is create a different survey for each monthly meeting. So this was May 2020, June 2020, August 2020. And what I do now is I have one survey that has multiple collectors. There's a collector for each of their monthly meetings. Let me click in and show you what that looks like. So y'all all know how to design your survey. In fact, we all at this point use probably the same 6 questions, or probably should be if we're not. And once your survey is set up with the group's branding and the title, you want to click on Collect Responses. And you'll see here I have collectors for each meeting date. So this was their November meeting, September, October, and let's go ahead and set one up for the January meeting that they'll have. So I'm going to click Add New Collector, add a web link collector, because that's how we do it. And I'm going to click Customize. Well, first thing I'm going to do is name it so that I know the meeting date. So that'll be 2023-01-17. And now I know what the collector name is. And then to make it easy for myself and for people who may be typing this into their web browser, if they're or into their phone, I'm going to rename this. And so I typically go with BHTF, or Behavioral Health Task Force, dash, and this will be January 2023. And I follow that pattern. It makes it easier. I don't have to go back and figure out what the new collector is. If I'm working on the agenda, I just know I'm going to follow that same pattern for the following month. And now this is the link that I'm going to put in the agenda that will drop in the chat if we're hybrid, that people can use to fill out the survey. And indeed, if you are doing it on paper, and you print it out and collect it back the paper copies, you then can very quickly click manual data entry right here and add a new response. It'll pop up a window that looks like you were doing it online, but it'll track it all back to this same collector, and it'll mark it as a manual data entry. So I use this a lot if I've got a hybrid meeting. I've got some folks in the room. I want them to do it on paper because they are more reliable to do it that way. And folks on Zoom will do it on Zoom. It takes me 5 minutes to input very quickly people's responses from the paper versions. And so when you do that, you hit done and it'll close there. So I've got my collector set up. People have taken all of the surveys for that meeting, and now we're going to analyze the results. It's after the meeting, working on the meeting summary. I want to give the summary back to people. Well, right now you see there are 212 responses. We need to filter those responses by the collector to be able to give back, say, the November meeting. And so I'm going to click that filter, this by collector, and I'm going to click the one that I want, which is 2022 11/15. Scroll down to the bottom, click Apply. And now you see I've got 5 responses from that meeting. Now, sometimes I want to show a group a trend that they've got going on. So let me turn off the filter rule that I've set up and instead compare. So let's say we've been working on a project, strategic planning, since June of 2022, and I'm curious, I want them to see what that trend has looked like over the past 6 months, or let's just say 3 months. So I'm going to, again, compare by collector, and I want them to look at, let's say, September, October, and November. Well, I'm going to click those, and then come down and click Apply again. And you'll see now I've got, in my charts here, in the responses, I've got comparing by the meeting date. So that's the September, October, and November. And I think we did this at a team meeting where apparently the Behavioral Health Task Force thinks I've gotten worse in September. But you can see then, well, you might ask yourself, why are more people at a 4 than at a 5? And in comparison to the meeting before, where we had more people at a 5 than a 4. Small data set, small sample size, so don't overthink it. But if you get enough information and you share it back with the group, they might have something to reflect on. Hey, actually, when we spent a lot of time in small groups, is the difference between October and November, and we like small groups better than the large group stuff. Maybe that's what it was, but it gives us something to think about. So how do I give this information back to the group? Well, I'm going to go, and first of all, you can see I've set this up to only show the data table. I don't find the charts to be particularly useful, and so under Customize for the question, I go to Display Options, and I only turn on the data table here, and I'll click Apply to All, and save. That turns off all of the charts. I don't find the charts, again, particularly useful for groups to see. And now let me export this to a PDF so that I can just attach it with the notes when I combine a PDF. So I'm going to go to Save As, Export File, and I'm going to do all summary data. And I have got the right view. What I'm going to change is I typically don't like starting each question on a new page. I like them all just run, it saves paper. But I do want the open-ended responses. Those are the comments that people might put in there. And so I'll click Include Open-Ended Responses, and then I will change the file name for myself. Obviously you can do this later, but it's easier if you do it at the beginning. So for me, that's eval Behavioral Health Task Force 2022. And the last meeting date was 11/15. So again, I'm working on the meeting summary for the November meeting. I want to give the information back to them in the meeting summary. I hit export. You'll see your export has started. And once it's complete, it shouldn't take terribly long because it's not that big of a data set. It'll say your export is complete, and you can click download. And it lets you know that all of your exports remain here for 2 weeks in case you need to grab them again. But I'm going to click download. And when I open that, you will see I have a very neat and tidy summary to give back to the group to say, hey, here's what things have looked like over the last 3 months as we've been working together. Are there any trends that you see? Nobody had any particular comments in this case, so you don't see any of those open-ended responses here, but they would be right here if there were any. And then this, we've got Adobe Acrobat Pro. Everybody has access to it, so when I finish the notes in Microsoft Word, I will turn that into a PDF and then combine the 2 PDFs, and I can send one PDF file of a meeting summary to a group for them to look at. As always, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. Hope this video was helpful. Like, share, and subscribe. I think that's what the kids say.